They didn't direct this film, they detonated it. In a decade saturated with neon-lit action flicks and sanitized shootouts, To Live and Die in LA didn't just stand apart, it refused to play by any of the rules. Directed by William Friedkin, the film felt like a crime scene, not a crime story. It wasn't crafted with convention, it was carved out of chaos. Set in a version of Los Angeles where federal agents act like the criminals they chase, the movie thrived on tension not just on screen, but behind the camera. There were no permits for key sequences, no traditional score from an established composer, no clear line between performance and risk. From a freeway chase that nearly shut down the city to counterfeiting scenes so realistic they caught the attention of federal agents, this wasn't just a production, it was a provocation. Friedkin didn't seek to reflect reality. He aimed to drag it into the light, even if it meant setting his own film on fire. The result? A film that feels dangerous because it was. The stakes weren't confined to the plot. They were embedded in the footage, in the methods, in the choices that could have gone very wrong. Some scenes were improvised, others were illegal, and one was possibly never meant to be seen at all. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about To Live and Die in LA, a film where nothing was faked except the money. Fact 1. They drove into oncoming traffic and kept rolling. It wasn't a set. It wasn't a closed road. It wasn't even legal. The iconic freeway chase in To Live and Die in L.A. 5 relentless minutes of wrong-way panic was filmed without city approval. Friedkin wanted the sequence to feel genuinely unhinged, like the entire road system had turned against the characters. So instead of staging it under safe, sanctioned conditions, he dropped his actors into live traffic. Early morning, minimal signage, hidden cameras, no stunt doubles for the key shots. William Peterson and his co-stars had to drive into the actual flow of freeway vehicles, many of which weren't part of the production. That honking, that swerving, that's not rehearsal, that's real people realizing something's gone horribly wrong. Spotters were placed on overpasses to radio updates. Friedkin reportedly told his crew, "We're not blocking danger, we're borrowing it." The footage they captured is frantic, disorienting, and unsettling because it was. There's a palpable lack of control that no amount of choreography could fake. Miraculously, no one was injured. But the stunt violated so many filming regulations that the studio was advised never to speak about the logistics in public. In the film, the chase feels like a breakdown of order, like the city has rejected the laws governing it. And for one morning on the I-710, that's exactly what happened. Fact 2. The lead actor was fired and his name was erased. Few directors would replace their main star once production has started. Friedkin didn't hesitate. The original actor cast as Secret Service agent Richard Chance had already filmed scenes when Friedkin decided something wasn't working. The intensity wasn't sharp enough. The moral decay wasn't visible. The character felt like a copy, not a threat. So Friedkin made a surgical cut. The actor was let go. No public explanation. No name on record. Enter William Peterson. Fresh from the Chicago theater scene, with no feature film experience, Peterson was flown in, handed a script, and thrown straight into production. His first shot, pulling a weapon and shouting threats during a takedown. There was no time to ease in. The urgency became his character's pulse. And that's what Friedkin wanted. A performer who was still adjusting, still off balance. Someone who looked like they were operating on instinct, not polished rehearsal. The result is a lead performance that feels unpredictable. Not heroic, not stable, just barely holding together. Which, in Friedkin's universe, means exactly right. The identity of the original actor has never been revealed. No interviews, no leaks. It's as if that version of the film was not just recast, but erased. Sometimes, the story behind the lens is just as ruthless as the one in front of it. Fact 3. The music was written first, then the film was cut around it. Most directors lock their picture before turning it over to a composer. Friedkin reversed the process. He hired British synth-pop duo Wang Chung, best known at the time for danceable radio hits, to compose the score. They had never worked on a film before. That didn't matter. Friedkin didn't want a typical soundtrack. He wanted a mood. Wang Chung received no footage, no scenes, just the script and a directive: build the emotional temperature. They wrote a full album's worth of dark, pulsing electronic tracks. Not cues, not themes. Environments. The music evoked something mechanical and hollow, like emotions stripped down to circuitry. Friedkin then edited large portions of the movie to the rhythm of the tracks, allowing the pacing and tonal shifts to emerge from the soundscape rather than the script. This approach gave the film a cold, hypnotic rhythm. The chase scenes didn't surge, they convulsed. The quiet moments didn't relax, they trembled. Some critics found the score alienating. Others called it revolutionary. Friedkin called it narrative glue. And Wang Chung? They walked away from their first and only score with something strange, a film that moved to their heartbeat. Fact 4. The first explosion was based on a real fatality. The film opens with a bang, literally. A federal agent, just days from retirement, confronts a suspect wearing explosives. Seconds later, he's vaporized. There's no dramatic swell, no warning, just a sudden absence. That wasn't a screenwriter's flourish. It was pulled from a real incident. While researching the world of counterfeiting and law enforcement, Friedkin spoke to multiple Secret Service agents. One story stuck. An agent had attempted to disarm a suspect, confident, trained, prepared, but the bomb was real. He didn't survive. Nothing was recovered. That detail haunted Friedkin, the abruptness, the helplessness, the finality. He rewrote the opening scene to reflect that moment not in sentiment, but in rhythm. There's no buildup. The man walks forward, and then he's gone. It sets the tone for the rest of the film. No one is safe, no one is sacred, and death isn't slow or noble. It just happens. The audience never gets a chance to process it because neither did the characters. Friedkin didn't want a dramatic death. He wanted a vanishing. And in less than a minute, he delivered it. Fact 5. Friedkin made the actors bleed for realism almost literally. In most films, danger is simulated. On this set, it hovered just outside the frame. Friedkin insisted that his actors perform their own stunts whenever possible. Not for bragging rights, but to make sure they were visibly living through the stress. He believed the camera could sense the difference between acting and survival. William Peterson sprinted across rooftops without doubles, climbed fences, jumped across gaps. No pads, no wires, just conviction and gravity. The physical demands were matched by psychological pressure. Friedkin brought in actual federal agents to run the actors through mock raids and drills. Some scenes used live blanks, others involved real tactics, real heat, and no second takes. One actor rolled his ankle during a chase. Friedkin rewrote the blocking to use the limp. Another bruised his ribs during a fall. They shot around the pain. The injuries weren't celebrated. They were absorbed. Because Friedkin didn't just want performances. He wanted people who were out of breath, off balance, and one mistake away from breaking. And that's what ended up on screen. Fact 6. The counterfeit bills were too good and too believable. Movies often cut corners when depicting money. Props are printed on fake paper, with oversized fonts or altered images to avoid legal issues. But To Live and Die in LA didn't fake its money. It replicated it. Friedkin hired a former counterfeiter who had spent time in prison to consult and then put him in charge of reproducing currency for the film. The bills were printed using techniques that mirrored real-world methods. Offset presses, chemical washes, plate alignment. Every step you see Defoe's character perform on screen, it was done in full, under real conditions. And that's where the trouble started. A crew member reportedly used one of the fake bills at a local gas station. The clerk flagged it. The Secret Service was alerted. They traced it back to the production. An investigation followed. Thousands of prop bills were seized. Friedkin had to explain that none were intended for circulation and that the accuracy was in service of storytelling, not subversion. The irony? The government nearly charged a film about counterfeiters with counterfeiting. For a movie built on blurred lines, this one got a little too sharp. Fact 7. The sex scene almost got the film banned. It wasn't the gunfights. It wasn't the car chase. It wasn't the counterfeiting. What nearly earned To Live and Die in LA an X rating was a bedroom scene, one that pushed past sensuality and landed somewhere far more disturbing. Between William Peterson's agent and Darlan Flugel's informant character, the moment is deliberately cold. There's no connection, no warmth, just mechanics and control. It doesn't feel erotic, it feels calculated. Friedkin directed the scene without romance, stripping away any illusion of intimacy. He wanted the audience to feel what the characters weren't, anything close to human attachment. The MPAA took issue. Their objection wasn't about nudity or explicit movement, it was about tone. The implication of emotional detachment unnerved them more than any on-screen violence. They slapped the film with an initial X. Friedkin refused to remove the scene entirely. He trimmed seconds, slight edits to rhythm, just enough to get an R. The scene remained and still draws discomfort today, not because of what it shows, but because of what it lacks. Sometimes, what's most unsettling isn't the presence of violence, it's the absence of empathy. Fact 8. The art in the film was real and so was its destruction. Willem Dafoe's character surrounds himself with aggressive, abstract paintings, works that feel angry, chaotic, and incomplete. They aren't decoration, they're confessions, and they weren't created by a production designer. They were painted by Dafoe himself. Friedkin allowed the actor to explore his character's inner world through canvas. No instructions, no oversight. Just raw expression. Dafoe isolated himself in a studio space between scenes and produced a series of disjointed, anxious works. He poured the character's frustration, nihilism, and instability into paint. Then, in one take, he set one of them on fire. That decision wasn't in the script. Dafoe improvised it. The painting, a real creation, was burned in one uninterrupted shot. The crew didn't cut. The moment stayed. It's easy to dismiss props as disposable, but in that scene, the destruction isn't symbolic, it's literal. He didn't just play the role, he offered something real to be destroyed. Fact 9. The ending was changed because the original felt too empty. Friedkin's first cut of To Live and Die in L.A. ended in silence. No score, no speeches, just a fade to nothing after everything collapses. It was intentionally bleak, a reflection of a world where actions echo into voids, not redemption. But test audiences didn't know what to do with it. Some were confused. Others laughed. It wasn't the kind of ending people expected, even from a film this cynical, so Friedkin adjusted without softening. In the revised version, a new agent walks into the frame wearing the same clothes, echoing the same demeanor as the man who died before him. It's not hopeful, it's mechanical. The institution keeps moving, the role is filled. Corruption doesn't vanish, it gets reassigned. The change didn't make the film warmer, it made it colder, because instead of tragedy, we're left with something worse. Normalization. Fact 10. A real federal agent shaped the film's most precise moments. The tactical accuracy in To Live and Die in L.A. isn't a coincidence. It's not guesswork either. Friedkin enlisted the help of an active Secret Service agent, not a consultant from years past, but someone still operating in the field. His name has never been publicly released. He wasn't credited, but his influence shaped the most methodical moments of the film. He advised on surveillance patterns, entry techniques, weapons handling, even the way agents carry themselves under pressure. Friedkin didn't just want cinematic law enforcement, he wanted documented behavior translated directly to screen. One warehouse raid was staged using the agent's real-world blueprint. Another scene involved interrogation techniques so grounded that one of the actors reportedly asked, "Should I even be hearing this?" The agent refused to appear on camera, citing department policy. But his imprint is visible everywhere in the silence before movement, the way guns are held, the precise pacing of every room entry. When fiction imitates procedure this closely, it stops feeling like performance and starts feeling like confession. Fact 11. A real theft slipped into the frame. Sometimes, the city adds its own scene. While filming at an industrial location in East Los Angeles, the crew set up for a night sequence. Lights were minimal. The actors were blocking a tense exchange. Then, off to the side, a man appeared, rushed past the background, shattered the window of a parked car, and started rummaging inside. It wasn't part of the script. It wasn't a planned stunt. It was an actual break-in, caught on camera. The crew stayed still. The actors held character. A security advisor, formerly with LAPD, radioed for help. Police arrived minutes later and arrested the man several blocks away. He had no idea he'd been filmed. Friedkin reviewed the footage. Ultimately, he chose not to include it in the final cut, but he kept the raw real. In a film obsessed with blurred lines between staged and real, this moment proved the line sometimes disappears entirely. Fact 12. No storyboards, no safety net, no regret. Most directors walk onto set with binders. Friedkin walked in with questions. He refused to use storyboards during production. Each day began with location scouting, not for new spots, but for angles that hadn't been noticed yet. He'd move through the space, follow the shadows, and redesign the entire scene around instinct. For the crew, it was chaos. Lighting plans were overhauled on the fly. Camera rigs were adjusted minutes before rolling. Actors were often given their blocking after the cameras were already rolling. On one rooftop sequence, a shift in the sun ruined the original lighting setup. Instead of waiting or rescheduling, Friedkin told everyone to flip the direction and shoot in reverse. They had 20 minutes to reset. His philosophy was brutal. If I already know what it's supposed to look like, it's probably dead. The resulting energy isn't just visible, it's palpable. Scenes feel unstable because they were, and that instability became part of the film's oxygen. Fact 13. The airport scene was shot guerrilla style at a federal facility. LAX is one of the most secure airports in the world. Filming there typically requires weeks of coordination, legal, paperwork, and oversight. Friedkin skipped all of that. After being denied permission to shoot on location, he sent a minimal crew into the airport with concealed cameras, minimal lighting, and actors dressed like regular passengers. The plan: film the scene in real time, during normal operations, without anyone noticing. There were no extras. The background activity, boarding announcements, confused glances, baggage carts whirring past is entirely authentic. William Peterson and John Pankow performed their dialogue softly, with casual body language, all while surrounded by unsuspecting travelers. The tension in the scene doesn't come from editing tricks. It comes from everyone knowing they could be caught at any moment. At one point, a transportation authority staff member approached the crew. They wrapped and exited within minutes. Friedkin never got formal approval, but he got the scene he needed. The result? A moment that feels less like narrative and more like surveillance footage. Because sometimes, you don't simulate pressure, you let it find you. Fact 14. The blood was recycled because the budget was bone dry. By the time To Live and Die in LA reached its final weeks of shooting, the money was nearly gone. What remained had been funneled into stunts, vehicles, insurance, and off-book locations. There wasn't enough left for a full restock of squibs and blood packs. Rather than delay or compromise, the special effects team cleaned and reused materials from earlier scenes. Torn shirts were patched, squibs were refitted. Fake blood was poured back into tubing and repressurized for new takes. One key gunshot was filmed with a squib that had already misfired twice. On the third try, it didn't burst as intended. Friedkin kept rolling. He later said the hesitation made the moment feel human. Violence, in this world, doesn't come with precision. It comes from malfunction. And in a film about instability, even the gore had to be salvaged. Fact 15. The film was so detailed, the FBI considered it a threat. Not because of its violence, not because of its politics, because it taught people how to break the law. The counterfeiting scenes in To Live and Die in LA are shockingly detailed. Step-by-step depictions of printing plates, chemical baths, ink ratios. Nothing is left vague. That wasn't accidental. Friedkin worked with a real former counterfeiter, but instead of abstracting the process, he filmed it like a procedural, precise, slow, and instructional. After an early screening attended by law enforcement, one FBI agent reportedly told Friedkin, "You just filmed a tutorial." In the months after the film's release, several small counterfeiting operations were uncovered on the West Coast. No formal link was proven, but some of the methods bore uncanny resemblance to what was shown on screen. The Secret Service reviewed the footage internally. Quiet warnings were issued to field offices. There was no censorship, but the concern was real. Friedkin, of course, refused to cut anything. He believed in showing the process in full, and he did. Sometimes, art doesn't imitate crime. It becomes part of the case file. Fact 16. The crack house scene wasn't recreated, it was entered. Most filmmakers send a crew to scout the roughest locations they can find, then build safer versions on sound stages. Friedkin did the opposite. When he found what he needed, he didn't replicate it. He walked into it. One sequence in To Live and Die in LA was filmed inside a real building in South Central Los Angeles. It wasn't abandoned. It wasn't condemned. It was occupied. The location had a reputation. The production knew it. So did the neighborhood. Inside, signs of active drug use and makeshift habitation were everywhere. Friedkin didn't flinch. He brought a stripped-down crew, minimal equipment, and 2 actors into the space. They shot quickly. No permits, no lighting rigs, no second takes. Voices from nearby rooms bled into the audio. Doors slammed unexpectedly. One of the actors broke character and froze mid-line. Friedkin kept the footage. That tension? It wasn't rehearsed. It was ambient. By the time they wrapped, everyone was already halfway to the van. In that scene, you can feel something off-screen, unscripted, uncontrollable, pressing in. Because it was. Fact 17. The studio tried to change the title until Friedkin threatened to walk. The original title, To Live and Die in LA, felt like a problem for the marketing team. Too vague, too fatalistic, too unconventional. The studio had alternatives lined up. Burnout, Agent Down, Deadline City. All of them safer. Friedkin rejected them outright. To him, the title wasn't a phrase. It was a mission statement. The film wasn't just set in Los Angeles, it was about it. About the cost of trying to survive there, the compromises, the decay, the lack of exit. He told the executives, "You change the title, you change the meaning." There was pushback. There were meetings. There were discussions about audience appeal and international distribution, but Friedkin stood his ground. He even threatened to disown the marketing campaign if the title changed. Eventually, the studio relented. The film hit theaters under its original name, and slowly, what had been a risk became a brand. A phrase quoted in music, referenced in television, whispered in film schools. The irony? The title they feared became the thing people remembered most. Fact 18. A character was meant to die until audiences saved him. John Pankow's character, the rookie agent assigned to William Peterson's reckless lead, wasn't supposed to make it out alive. In Friedkin's original script, the rookie dies during a failed sting operation. It was meant to be the final warning. Idealism doesn't survive in this world. His death would mirror the fate of his mentor and suggest that the system simply eats its own. But test audiences reacted differently. They didn't see the character as weak. They saw him as human. Flawed, yes, but still salvageable. His death didn't shock, it just depressed. Friedkin rewrote the third act. Instead of dying, the rookie adapts. In the final scene, he steps into the role of the man he once followed. Same confidence, same coldness. The transformation isn't redemption, it's absorption. The message didn't soften, it darkened. He didn't rise above the system. He was consumed by it. And in a story where identity erodes under pressure, that ending may be the bleakest one possible. Fact 19. The poster was banned because it hit too close to the truth. Long before anyone saw a frame of "To Live and Die in L.A.," controversy had already begun on a bus stop. The film's original poster featured a silhouette holding a pistol, drenched in orange light, framed by a cityscape slowly decaying. The tagline was bold: "The Secret Service isn't just about protecting the president." Transit authorities across several major cities, including Boston, Cincinnati, and Phoenix, refused to display it. Their reasons were vague. Too aggressive, promotes lawlessness, suggests federal agencies are compromised, which, of course, was the entire point. Friedkin didn't back down. Neither did the studio. But instead of fighting public transit policies, they quietly pivoted, printing limited runs of the banned poster, distributing them to indie theaters, music venues, and collectors. The tactic worked. Within weeks, the poster became a cult object circulating in underground film communities, punk record stores, and college dorm rooms. It wasn't just marketing, it became a message. What had once been considered too dangerous to advertise was now a symbol of the film's defiance. Fact 20. Friedkin hinted at a hidden cut, and then never spoke of it again. In an offhand remark during a panel years after the film's release, Friedkin said something that's haunted cinephiles ever since. "There's another version," he muttered, "one that was never shown. No further details, no follow-up, no confirmation." The moderator moved on. But the room remembered. Speculation took over. Some believe he meant a rough early cut, more experimental, more violent, possibly featuring a bleaker ending. Others insist there's a lost version with extended character arcs and a different psychological trajectory. A few former crew members have even suggested it was screened once, privately, before being shelved indefinitely. But no copy has surfaced. No footage, no alternate script, nothing in studio records. Just a single sentence. It might have been misdirection. Or it might be real, sitting on a reel in a locked cabinet, somewhere far from Los Angeles. Because if any director would leave a shadow version of his most dangerous film, it would be Friedkin. Bonus fact: the fire wasn't planned, and neither was the grief. Near the end of the film, there's a moment that slips by almost too quietly. Willem Dafoe's character sets fire to one of his paintings. He doesn't shout, doesn't flinch. He simply lights the edge, steps back, and watches it disintegrate. It feels symbolic. It isn't. That painting wasn't a prop. It wasn't mass-produced by the art department. It was real, painted by Dafoe himself during his off hours on set. Friedkin had encouraged him to create his character's artwork personally, using emotion rather than style guides. The canvas that burns on screen was one Dafoe had worked on for days. And the fire? It wasn't scripted. Dafoe made that decision in the moment. The cameras were rolling. No one called cut. No one moved. The crew stood in silence as paint blistered and flame devoured something that had once been painstakingly made. One assistant later said, "It didn't feel like we were watching a scene. It felt like we were witnessing a funeral." Friedkin never asked why Dafoe did it. He never reshot it. He just left it there. Because in a story about forgery, deception, and destruction, sometimes the only honest thing you can do is let something real disappear. Which detail left the deepest mark? The real freeway chaos? The artwork turned to ash? Or the version of the film that may never be seen? Tell us in the comments which fact shifted how you view To Live and Die in LA. And let us know which film you'd like us to dissect next. not from the outside, but from underneath the frame.